Welcome to the Your Illini Nation pregame show live from Madison, Wisconsin. Bret Beherns here along with Jeremy Werner getting set on a beautiful day for Illinois and Wisconsin. This is perfect football. October, we're ready to go.
October, that's right. No, beautiful day. It's about 90 degrees in the press box, but hey, no, it's this is fall, man. And hey, what do you know? Illinois 3-1, and probably Bret with their best chance to compete against Wisconsin in a while.
We have got a relevant game here in October between Illinois and Wisconsin. Haven't been able to say that for a long time. Wisconsin has owned this series, Jeremy. It has not been close. 15-3 since 2002. Wisconsin 8 straight here at Camp Randall. We are just outside of the stadium right now. See some Illini fans walking in here, predominantly red though. And I feel like Illinois has a chance today. We'll get to some predictions coming up a little bit later, but like they should compete.
Well, the line opened up at 10 points, which is not that ridiculous. It's Wisconsin. They've won 8 straight against Illinois. Most of the Illini roster has not been alive.
Yeah.
The last time Illinois won in Camp Randall Stadium back in 2002. So this has been a tale of two programs. One in Wisconsin that under Barry Alvarez turned into a juggernaut. Continued that under Bret Bielema, of course, the major storyline with his return to Madison. But it's continued to be that coach after coach, whether it's Gary Anderson or now Paul Chryst. Now they have been weakened a little bit. They feel a little bit more vulnerable than years past. But we know Wisconsin can do two things really well. That's run the football and play really good defense under Jim Leonard, their star defensive coordinator. So it's a great test for Illinois. They've played more finesse teams here recently, especially the last 3 weeks. It's going to be a physical, kind of black and blue Big Ten West game here today.
Yeah, and Bret said earlier in the week that if you love Big Ten football, you're going to love this game. I feel like that's going to be the case. Thanks to everyone watching here on Facebook, on Twitter as well. We are chiming in as well. Hopefully everyone is enjoying their Saturday morning as we get ready for college football in October. A little Christmas in the air this morning. And I feel like for the first time in a long time, and maybe they'll prove us wrong, Jeremy, because it was 24-0 in a shutout last year, that I didn't feel like in Champaign that game was as close as the score indicated. I felt like it could have been 42-0 for how we felt. I feel like Illinois is going to come out and at least compete today. And the thing that stood out to me, Bret Bielema has been hyping up these rematch games. And like, we always think and, examine what Bret says and how he says it, because I think he's very intentional in what he says to the media.
Oh, yeah.
But when he says things all the time, he's not only telling us, I think he's telling his team, hey, take notice. And to me, that's what stood out. They've had this game circled for a long time.
Yeah, no, I asked Bret about that, the rematch, because he made a huge deal about it after Virginia, that, hey, we have shown over a calendar year how much we've improved by just this Virginia rematch.
Right.
Of course, there are differences of the teams, the personnel, the coaching staffs, but I think this one lines up exactly like that. So I asked him about it. He kind of poo-pooed it a little bit because I think he's just focused on each game at a time. Doesn't want to make a big deal of it coming in. But I think afterwards, if they win this game or they're competitive, he's going to talk about how many strides we made. Because, yes, it was 24-0. The score wasn't that close. The total yards were 490 to 90. Illinois ran for 26 yards. And what really stood out about that game is Illinois was only down 10-0 at halftime. But I think Tony Peterson really got away from himself and what his team does well, which is run the ball. Chase Brown didn't have that many carries in that game, but averaged 4.5 yards per carry. But Illinois threw the ball 36 times for about 67 yards. Brandon Peters got hurt in that game, and Art Sikowski just kind of aired it out. I think that was kind of the beginning of the end for Tony Peterson, because I thought it was the game plan got away from him. I'm really interested to see how Barry Lunny does against a Wisconsin defense that I think is good, but I don't think has as many NFL players on it as it did last year.
Do you feel like Wisconsin is vulnerable? They've lost at home here to Wazoo, which was a surprise to me. They got rocked by Ohio State last week. That's fine. Ohio State is the cream of the crop here in a top 5 team in the country. Do you think they're vulnerable today?
I think they are vulnerable. I think they showed that against Washington State by shooting themselves in the foot. And I think the last couple of years you've seen Wisconsin not be able to compete with the top teams in the conference, right? Like Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan blew them out last year. Ohio State blew them out again this year. So I don't think the talent discrepancy is as big as it's been. They also have 2 great linebackers in Leo Chenal and Jack Sanborn, who's on the Chicago Bears. And their offensive line has been their staple, right? This offensive line is good, I think, for Wisconsin, but I don't think it's as dominant as it's been in years past. But I felt the same thing going into last year, and they ran for 390 yards against Illinois. So I think for Illinois, they got to prove that in the trenches they can still stack up with a physical team like this, because the most physical team they played so far is Wyoming. And Wyoming did run for 180 yards against them. Illinois was able to run the ball against them, but I think that's still a big challenge. But I do think outside of Braylon Allen, Keanu Benton at nose tackle, and Nick Herbig, their outside linebacker, I think Illinois has got as much high-end talent as Wisconsin. It's just Wisconsin's depth has always been better than Illinois.
You bring up the Cowboys, and it makes me think they've been pretty good since then. They've won 3 games. And Virginia, I don't think is that great. I still think Brennan Armstrong's a really good quarterback. I don't know what's happened to him this season. He has completely fallen off. I don't know if Indiana's very good. And, for Chattanooga being an FCS team, I feel like they're pretty good. But with that being said, where do you feel like Illinois stacks up into that, with a 4-game sample size? And how much will we find out today, Jeremy, about those first 4 games being 3-1?
Yeah, Wisconsin's the best team Illinois has played all year. I think that's fair to say. I think they're a top 40, top 50 team in the country. I don't think Illinois has played a top 40, top 50 team in the country so far. So this is certainly a step up, a proving ground for Illinois. But I do think what you've liked about their first 4 games, despite a loss to Indiana, Brett, is they've dominated all those games. Yeah. Yards, moving the ball, all those things, they have dominated. They just shot themselves in the foot way too many times against Indiana. They really did against Virginia, right. And we're fortunate Ryan Walters' defense was so good. But I do think this defense is far better than it was last year. I do think the defensive line is far better than it was last year. And I think the offense, we've seen under Barry Lonnie, the concepts work better. The talent is working better. He's just putting these guys in better positions to succeed. So that's why this game is so much fun, Brett, because you get to test those things.
Right.
Like, we know a little bit more about Illinois through 4 games. We think their defense is pretty good. We think Chase Brown's really good. We think the quarterback play and passing game has improved. Well, Wisconsin's going to make you prove that they've made those kind of strides, because this could be a wake-up call for Illinois that, hey, you still got some strides to make, or it could be the coming out party for this program.
Yeah, and I feel like if Illinois walks out of Camp Randall with a win for the first time in 20 years today, that's the moment.
Oh, yeah.
For me. Certainly you had those last year, winning at Penn State and beating a top 10 program on the road. That's significant for year 1. And you win at Minnesota. That game didn't get as much national hype. I don't even know, even with Illini fans, they're like, oh, it's just Minnesota. Minnesota's a far better program the last 5-6 years than Illinois. Yes, those are significant and important, but I feel like today, this would be the real moment, because all the storylines, Jeremy, are going to be Bret Bielema, right? If he wins today, you come back home, he wins, that's certainly significant. They're going to sell that no matter what. But from the program to beat a Wisconsin team that has just owned you for 20 years, I feel like for me, that would be the moment. How do you feel like that shapes up?
Well, Bret Bielema was brought here to do things this program hasn't done in a long time. They did some of those things last year, as you're talking about. Going on the road and beating Penn State. It was an ugly game, but you found a way to win ugly. Minnesota, kind of similar things, 14-6. You found a way to beat another ranked team. But what you failed to do was kind of stack those wins. You lost to Rutgers, right? You lost to Iowa when you had a 10-point early lead in that game. I think that's why this stretch coming up is so important. If you go 0-3, you're kind of the same old Illinois program. If you go 0-3 against Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, if you go 1-2, I think that's kind of holding serve of what you did last year in the conference. If you win 2 of those, this program is taking a huge leap, right? But it starts today. If you can find a way to win on the road, first time in 20 years in Wisconsin, I think that's a huge statement for this program, especially coming after Virginia. We're talking about comparing to last year. If you're able to beat Virginia, which was one of your blowouts last year, and then beat Wisconsin, your only other blowout last year, those are the 2 blowouts that you had last year in the loss column. If you can turn those around, I think that's a huge statement about the program. I think you come home against Iowa with a fantastic crowd, which we know has not been the case the last couple of weeks. If you can do that, sell it in recruiting, I think this program has a chance to lift off. And I know they go into every game saying, Brett, that they expect to win. If they win today, I think in that locker room, you're feeling a heck of a lot more confident moving forward to the rest of the season.
Right. I think it completely changes the season and potentially the program in that sense. Obviously, you have to continue to build off of it. But that would be a winning streak, Jeremy. I mean, they never won back-to-back games under Bret Bielema, and they do that. They've now crossed that off. You can win 3, as our favorite movie Major League would say. It has happened before. That would be a winning streak. We'll see what happens today. we talked about Wisconsin and kind of like, hey, maybe they're a little bit vulnerable. This isn't the Wisconsin of old, but it all starts at running back and certainly the offensive line. And Braylon Allen's one of the best in the country. When you look at the top 5 running backs in the country, like, it's the Big Ten West. It's incredible.
Yeah, when you look at Braylon Allen, who's recruited as a linebacker, that's kind of what Illinois wants out of Jordan Anderson and Caden Fagan in the future. 6'2", 235 pounds, just an absolute load. And he really had his coming out party last year against Illinois. It was his first 100-yard rushing game, and then he ended the season with like 7 of his final 8 games. They were, 2-3 coming into that game against Illinois last year. Big questions, kind of like now, are they vulnerable? Is this the best chance for Illinois to upset them? Braylon Allen really keyed their turnaround. Along with Chez Mellusi, he's a really good running back. Could probably start for a lot of Big Ten teams. So they are very strong at running back. They're still good on the offensive line. Illinois' physicality is going to be tested, right? Especially a defensive line, Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph, and another guy. Calvin Avery is going to be key today. They got a really good center in Joe Tippmann. They're going to be tested because they have dominated. Like, the Illinois linebackers don't have that many tackles because the defensive line is doing so well. So they will be tested. Gabe Akis in the run game will be tested today. So that's the fun part of this, is Illinois gets to find out how it stacks up against a really good rushing attack because, as I said, Indiana, Virginia, Chattanooga, not good running attacks against a defense like Illinois.
I feel like this is a matchup of 2 very similar teams in a sense. You have a stud running back, and I feel like from both sides, they want each other's quarterback to throw the ball. Is that how you kind of stack this up from a game plan scenario? I feel like it's very similar.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Chattanooga did against Chase Brown. They were able to bottle him up a little bit, right? But Tommy DeVito was able to make the throws. I think whichever quarterback, 1, takes care of the ball, and 2, has a good day and connects on some deep shots, will be the team that comes out victorious today. Because, as you said, I think both these defenses are really good. I think both these running games are pretty good. So the defenses are going to stack the box and force these quarterbacks to throw into tight windows. And Graham Mertz, despite the Heisman performance he had here 2 years ago in that pandemic game with no fans, 5 touchdowns, he's facing a different defense. Last year against Ryan Walters, he was 10 of 19. For 100 yards and 1 interception, didn't throw a touchdown. He just didn't have to throw the ball very much because Braylon Allen was so dominant in that game, Chez Mellusi as well. So I think it's going to be a different story today, and I think Graham Mertz, who has really struggled against Power 5 opponents since that game against Illinois, he's thrown 17 touchdowns to 18 interceptions. He's going to have to throw the ball into some tight windows today against an Illinois secondary. I thought it's just been fantastic, Brett.
Yeah, and I think that the Illinois defense has earned my trust in that sense. You know, that like, hey, this is legit. And I realize there's like some atrophy with Illini Nation of like the Lovey era and, okay, well, we're just going to give up more. But like, they haven't. Give them credit that they have been very, very good. One of the best teams in the country, top 5 defense coming in and scoring defense. Like, it's weird to say those things because for so long, Jeremy, we talked about Illinois' defense and it was just putrid, awful.
Yeah, it's a completely different approach to defense at the college level. Lovie Smith, the problem we kept talking about, why is this not working outside of the 4-game stretch of 2019? Lovie Smith sat back in zone and waiting for teams to kind of make mistakes. So the problem is that allowed college quarterbacks to diagnose the defense before the snap and know where they're going to go with the ball. Ryan Walters confuses them. He blitzes them. He pressures them. He makes 18 to 22-year-old quarterbacks make split-second decisions, and often that doesn't go very well. They make a lot of mistakes. So I think you're going to see that a lot. But again, you got to stop Braylon Allen and Chez Mellusi to make that happen. So they're going to have to slow this Wisconsin rushing attack. I don't expect Illinois to stop Wisconsin's rushing attack, but they have to contain them and force them into some third down throws.
And if Mertz throws, like you said, he's not that good. and he's been very average for a lot of his career. I mean, to me, that's where it all begins and starts. From the other end of it, like, I think Tommy DeVito has earned himself. Yeah, he had a career game, 332 yards, the most he's ever thrown in a college game last week. Understood, it was FCS Chattanooga. But I feel like there's a lot of things building there positive for Illinois in that sense coming off of that. And like we talked earlier with, you can build off of this game now. I fully believe that from the confidence side. I feel like Tommy DeVito's coming in as confident as he's ever been. Not that he really ever lacks confidence, because he doesn't. But I feel like that only helped him last week when he gets in some adverse situations today.
Yeah, one of these quarterbacks has a little bit of momentum, probably a little bit of mojo coming into this game, and it's Tommy DeVito.
And it's Tommy DeVito.
The issue is he hasn't played a defense quite like Wisconsin so far. Virginia's defense isn't very good. Chattanooga's just can't hand up. And Indiana isn't that good, but they had 4 takeaways against Illinois. So Illinois will have to take care of the ball. Graham Mertz reminds me a little bit of Brandon Peters. Brandon took care of the ball better than Graham Mertz did, but he makes throws that make you go, whoa, this guy's got talent, but he's really frustrating. He's really up and down, really inconsistent, and he does put the ball in harm's way. So Illinois has to take advantage of those moments. They have to win the turnover battle to come out victorious today, which is still a big question for this offense, right? I try not to look too much into the Ohio State-Wisconsin game and the Chattanooga-Illinois game, because we've got to remember, against two Power 5 opponents, Illinois has had 8 turnovers. Against two Power 5 opponents, Illinois has really struggled to score once they get in the red zone. They can move the ball 20-20, but you got to score in the red zone, and that's going to be put to the test today. I think that's the big questions about this offense aren't can they move the ball? Is this passing attack better? Is this quarterback better? I think all those things have been answered, but can they put points on the board against a really good defense? I'm interested to see.
Yeah, and I would expect a low-scoring game coming in. The total was at 44, I believe. I feel like that's pretty close to where it's going to be. We'll see how that plays out. If field goals... Okay, 17-10. We got our first score prediction there here on the pregame show. We'll see what happens.
Probably beat us on it.
Yeah, probably. We'll circle back to that after the game if we're both brutally wrong. But field goals also a concern for me. If it's going to be low scoring, special teams, red zone offense chances, like, to me, those are the two things that stand out for Illinois going in.
That's a fascinating game because Illinois' red zone offense has been bad and the red zone defense has been fantastic.
Yeah, right.
And both these kickers struggle. Caleb Griffin's 5 of 9 so far on the season, and Wisconsin's 4 of 8. And their starting kicker has been hurt here recently. So that could be another key factor, is which field goal kicker is going to be more accurate today. And those are what I think this is going to come down to. And that's a statement about Bret Bielema. I think it's going to come down to the little things, a turnover here, a third down conversion here, or a field goal. I think that's why Illinois lost some of these close games last year and what they have to do to start winning those. Because you think of Maryland, you think of Purdue last year, some of those Rutgers came down to really little things. The last two Power 5 opponents, Illinois hasn't done the little things that well, and I include Virginia into that. They should have won that game 40-3.
Yeah.
So those are the things I think Illinois is going to have to clean up today.
Well, and if they clean those up, they're 4-0 coming into this game. They would have beat Indiana. It's pretty simple when it comes down to that. We said injuries. We should note Josh McCray did not make the trip today. He is not going to play this week, maybe next week. What was your feeling on that as we're now 6 weeks out post-injury from Wyoming game?
I mean, we saw that injury a month ago. It didn't look good. So when Bret Bielema originally set a timeline of we'll see about Wisconsin after I always thought the second bye week would kind of be, is this the time? Like, can he get there for Minnesota? Because he said he just started running on flat land. Right. So he's been doing the hydro tub, all that stuff. I didn't expect him to play in this game. I never did. I think next week would probably be in doubt as well. Maybe Minnesota, but I think the realistic, what I would set my mind for is he should be back after the second off week for Nebraska. Before then, I think is up in the air.
Yeah, and they're going to play him if he's available. I mean, he's a difference maker. And, you could argue they would have won the Indiana game.
Yeah, and he didn't even travel this week, so I think that tells you he's still a little bit away.
Right. Other than that, I think they're pretty clean.
Yeah, outside of Ezekiel Holmes, obviously being out for the season, outside linebacker, but you feel pretty good about Gabe Akis and what he's been able to do. Alec Bryant got back last week. So they're playing really well at outside linebacker the last couple weeks. They've been able to get home and get sacks the last couple weeks, which has been big. They got to do that again today. They got to put Wisconsin into some second and third and longs to force Graham Mertz to throw the ball. So anytime they drop back, Illinois got to find a way to get to the quarterback. But also, I'm really interested to see Gabe Akis, how he handles a physical rushing team, right? Like, we know he can rush the passer. I have no doubts he's special in that regards. He's probably a future NFL pass rusher. But how does he hold up against the most physical team he's played so far? Yeah,
and this time last year he's playing high school football. Like, there's a big difference in that when you try and look at that perspective and what it is. Minnesota and Iowa and Wisconsin are not Chattanooga, Indiana, and Wyoming, right? So, like, as we change the month here into October, it really heats up in terms of the difference in what they're going to see on the field. And I feel like overall, Jeremy, injuries have been pretty clean. I mean, yes, you say Holmes and you don't want to jinx anything, obviously, for them, but, like, overall, it's been okay, because that was a huge concern coming into the season, right? We were sitting here going, okay, you feel pretty good about the ones, twos, a little shaky at some positions, and certainly others where you're looking at it going, if you lose a Keith Randolph or a Johnny Newton, if you lose offensive lineman, 1 or 2, a quarterback, certainly. We saw Art last week get some reps, but he has not been in there very much. overall, they've been pretty lucky in that.
Yeah, no, they've been fortunate. I think Tank Wright deserves some credit
Sure.
of not having those soft tissue injuries, whether it's hamstrings, stuff like that really bothers you. Outside of some cramping in week 1 and week 2 when it was really hot, this team has done really, really well with injuries so far. And it's another factor coming into today. I mean, part of the reason I worry about this team is its lack of depth. Going into late October and early November. So far, they've been able to stay healthy, while Wisconsin's had some injuries on the offensive line. Their top tight end, Clay Cundiff, is out for a while. He had a leg fracture, I believe. So they've had some key injuries. Illinois has had one, I would say, really key injury in Josh McCray, and Ezekiel Holmes, solid player, but you feel like you got a good one behind him, and Gabe Ackus and certainly Alec Bryant.
Everyone's going to know Braylon Allen's name. Give us a couple other playmakers from Wisconsin that you say, hey, look, they got to at least keep an eye on these guys. You mentioned the top tight end out. We just saw him. He came in here just a couple of minutes ago. Anybody else that, like, especially on the end, receiver, and anyone that's you're like, hey, you got to keep an eye on this guy?
One guy I'm really interested to see, because they got some receivers that have a little bit of yards, but he hasn't gotten loose too much yet outside of one touchdown. It's former East St. Louis kid, Keontez Lewis. He's 6'4", 190 pounds, former 4-star prospect. Illinois tried to get him a couple years ago, but he transferred from UCLA to Wisconsin.
Okay.
He's only got one big play so far, but kind of the long athletic receiver that Wisconsin hasn't had a lot of here recently. So he's one guy I'm really interested to see if he gets going. The other guy I want to mention is Ches Malusi. He had 140 yards against Illinois. So I know Braylon Allen gets a lot of the attention, and he should, but they have two backs that are capable of having big days that Illinois has got to really game plan for. And that's what Illinois misses with Josh McCray is when Chase Brown goes out, needs a breather, they take a step down. Wisconsin certainly takes a small step down from Braylon Allen to Ches Malusi, but it's not as big.
What have you made of that backup running position with Josh out? Do you feel comfortable in that and what they have there? We saw a little bit of Aiden Lawford last week, but he has not really factored into that like maybe we thought he would coming in. Jordan Anderson hasn't played hardly at all this year. Do you feel good about the options there of what they have behind him?
To be honest, I don't feel good. I think Reggie Love is serviceable. I think he certainly has some burst to him, but he's not Chase Brown. Right? And that's why it was really hard for them to get Chase Brown off the field against Indiana. Why he had 36 carries. The last couple of weeks, they've been able to manage that late in the game. I wouldn't be shocked if Chase Brown had 30 touches today or 25 plus touches, because you need your best playmaker. You need that threat to go the distance. I think Reggie Love can come in, give you 4 yards a carry, maybe give you a first down run or two. I still think he's coming back health-wise from some injuries that he's had, but certainly there's a drop-off from Chase to Reggie Love. And I think there's a drop-off from Josh McCray to Reggie Love, and Chase or Josh McCray just so different than any back that they have right now. Because Jordan Anderson, I know fans just want to plug in the next big guy. Bret Bielema, the last time we talked to him about him, said he's not quite ready as a true freshman to play in a place like this.
Yeah, and I feel like Reggie Love has even submitted himself in that to a role over Chase Hayden.
Yeah.
We saw Chase a little bit in there, but like it's going to be Reggie, I feel like, if Chase goes out, and he will go out, need a breather with a series, whatever that may be. You feel like 25 to 30 carries is good for Chase Brown? Is that the number they need to hit? Because they're going to stay with the run, right? I don't feel like they're going to abandon it this year.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think you got to be patient with it. If Wisconsin bottles it up, like Tony Pearson just abandoned it last year.
It disappeared.
I thought it was a complete mistake to do that because Wisconsin just wore down the Illinois defense, and you just couldn't maintain possession. I know it's hard to run against Wisconsin, but you can't give up on it, especially when you got a back like Chase Brown that can make a play. Even when blocking's not great, Chase Brown can find a way to make a play. So if he has 25 plus carries, I think you're feeling good about how the game is going and how the game plan is gone. But I think getting him involved in the passing game, he's just a playmaker, Brett. But the good news is you've had other guys really step up. Isaiah Williams is a real playmaker that defenses have to account for, and you finally have somebody that's kind of complementing him as a deep threat, more vertical threat in Pat Bryant, who had a monster game last week against Chattanooga and has had some flashes already this season, leading the team in receiving yards so far. And I do think the tight ends get involved a little bit today because Wisconsin's linebackers are inexperienced compared to what they had last year with two all-Big Ten guys. So I think Tip Ryman, Michael Marquez, Luke Ford can get involved today too.
Do you expect them to take some deep threats with Pat? We saw that last week. Really, that had not evolved until last week where we felt like Illinois had its go-to guy downfield and vertical in Pat Bryant.
They're finding him. They're finding a way. I mean, Brian Hightower's kind of been the move the chains guy But you can see Tommy DeVito, when he wants to go deep with the ball, who's he going to now? It's number 13, Pat Bryant. He's got a lot of trust in him. And Pat showed last week he can do some things after the catch that I don't think Brian Hightower or Casey Washington quite can do. So another thing, I put this in my preview too, like, I think they're setting up Isaiah Williams. Everything's kind of underneath with him, right? And that's where he lives. But I'd like to see a double move deep shot to Isaiah Williams. You haven't seen many deep shots to him. I think at some point you could get that. But I think Barry Illini, like, you're seeing the playbook evolve here the last couple weeks. This is where you unleash whatever you have.
Absolutely. And I feel like the RPO game really took a step forward last week. We hadn't seen that much at all. And that can be really, really threatening for a defense if they can continue to execute at a high level with that.
I would expect Jim Leonard's defense to be a bit more disciplined than Chattanooga was. Chattanooga was really aggressive. Their safeties coming up. But yes, that is just another tool you have in the toolbox that you didn't have last year. I mean, it puts defenses in conflict, puts linebackers and safeties in conflict. When you have a guy like Chase Brown, he draws so much attention that if Tommy DeVito can make the right reads, and he's done that most of the year, and he had a fantastic game doing that against Chattanooga, if you got a guy you can trust to do that, you can get some easy yards. Like, you just see the ball, like, for years, Brett, we sat there and said, why is it so easy for other teams to get passing yards, and it looks so hard for Illinois? It's starting to look easier for Illinois with Barry Illini.
How many times did we sit here on this pregame show and well before it even started and say, what are they doing? Like, you know, tough memories there to think about. Right?
It's just good concepts, and it's a quarterback that they trust to make decisions, and a guy who can throw the ball accurately. I know a lot of these throws are short, quick throws, but Tommy gets it out so quickly. He's got a quick release, and he's been pretty accurate the last couple games, and his deep ball accuracy is starting to improve. He's going to have to show all those things today. Like, Tommy DeVito is going to have a great day for Illinois to come out victorious.
No doubt about it. All right, let's work towards a prediction here. We already had a 17-10. We'll see. I'm kind of in that low-scoring feeling. We'll see where we're at. What did you write in the column? What'd you pick?
I had a score all week in my head of 20-16.
Okay.
I didn't know which team to put that on. I think Illinois is going to have a chance to win this game. I really do. It's just hard for me, Brett, to pick them when they haven't played a team like Wisconsin quite yet. Like, if they had played Michigan State instead of Indiana and found a way to compete in that game, or just a more physical opponent, I would have been more likely to pick them. But I just think Wisconsin's going to come in here hungry. But I do think Illinois has as much high-end talent as Wisconsin. And if they execute, they're going to have a chance to win in the fourth quarter. But I do have the Badgers winning a close one, but I have Illinois covering 20-16.
Man, I've been on the fence with you. Similar. I just feel like Illinois can compete, will compete, put themselves in a position to win. Can they make the execution plays down the stretch? I've been questioning it. I'm going to pick Illinois. I think the time has come for them. I think Bret Bielema is going to have his guys together. I think Wisconsin coming off that big loss, they got crushed. Didn't even really compete in Columbus, which, look, there's not many teams that are going to, especially in the Big Ten West against Ohio State. I'm going to pick Illinois, and I think it's going to be pretty close. I'm going to pick them 21-20.
There you go.
I think it's going to be right in that similar area. I do trust the Illinois defense for what they've shown and what they've proven so far this season. I think they are going to give up a couple of plays where you're just going to go, hey, that's what a Big Ten West champion team-esque does, and that's Wisconsin. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. I said after Chattanooga, I think Illinois is going to win one of the next two games.
Okay.
And I think that's the measure, right? Like, I thought they'd be 3-1 after 4 games, lose one that could be frustrating, and win one, like against a Power 5 team. That's what they did. I think they're going to win one of the next 2 games. So I struggled. Is it Iowa? Is it Wisconsin? I think Iowa's offense is way worse, but their defense, I think, is better. So I do think they're going to find a way to win one of these next 2 games. I think that says a lot about Bret Bielema and his staff, about the expectations, how they've changed, and just the style of play. Like, they are a well-coached team that's going to have a lot of close games.
And like we mentioned, you feel like if you can go 1-2, okay, you're still feeling good about a bowl game. My prediction has changed overall for the season. I think they've shown me enough that I can predict this team going to a bowl.
Yes. Especially with Northwestern and Nebraska doing what they're doing.
No doubt about it there. And I know the game's at Nebraska, but they just failed to compete against Oklahoma. And overall this season, just have not competed very well. So I feel like this team is a bowl team now.
Yes.
I had them at 5-7 before. What was your preseason?
I had 6-6. I thought they were going to be a bowl team.
Sure.
I was kind of probably more towards like the 5.8 wins if you want to get nitty-gritty with it. But I thought they were an improved team. But right now, I feel even more confident they get to a bowl game. And if they come out of here with a victory, you feel like they could have, could they get 8 wins? Could they get more than that?
I'm with you there too. I feel like if you go 2-1 in this next 3, which is just a ginormous stretch for the season, I think you could win 8 games. 7-8 is in the realm of possibility at that point.
Because outside of Michigan on your schedule right now, who do you feel you can't compete with?
There's nobody, because Michigan State is not that good.
No, Michigan State has flaws. Wisconsin has more flaws than we thought. Iowa has more flaws than we thought. Minnesota is really good, but you beat that team last year. Now Mo Ibrahim is back, and he's one of the best running backs in the country. And I think that's going to be a very tough game, but they're beatable. All these teams are really beatable.
And that game's at home. You feel good about that being at home.
And Northwestern looks awful, just atrocious. I don't know how Nebraska lost to that team, but I think that tells you a lot about how the mess Nebraska is. So, yeah, if you can find a way to win one of these next 2 games, or 2 of the next couple games, I think you feel really good about the direction of this program and this season.
No doubt about it. All right, that's going to do it for the Your Illini Nation pregame show. I will say we've seen quite a bit of orange walking by here.
It's one of the best Big Ten towns to come to. One of the best scenic ones, but the bars up and down the strip here, it's a fantastic place. This is in Iowa City.
Is this pretty high ranking on your stadium?
Yeah, this Iowa City, Lincoln. Would be up there. Ann Arbor's pretty good. Yeah. You and I have had some good times in Ann Arbor.
That's right. I'm going to go, this is probably like top 5 for me.
Yeah, it's good.
I think Iowa's better. I love Nebraska. I think that's my number 1.
Iowa City's
even better than Michigan. Iowa City's great too. Just great college towns, So I'll pick top 5 for Camp Randall. We'll go from there.
There's Piscataway up there.
No, we'll pass on Piscataway. If we never make that trip again, I'd be all right with that. All right, Jeremy's heading back up to the 90-degree press box. I'll be on the field. We'll have coverage continuing all day long here. Watch Bret Bielema's post-game press conference on these same digital channels. Check out Illini Inquirer. What you guys got there? Joey wrote about Isaiah Adams. Was that this week? Or was that last week?
He wrote plenty about Isaiah Adams. Okay. We'll have all the normal game day stuff. Got some recruiting stuff up as well. Big commitment for Illinois basketball.
Yes.
Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, we got plenty of content up on that. We'll have the post-game reaction videos, as Brett will as well, and all of our analysis.
Okay, for Jeremy Werner, I'm Brett Beherns. Enjoy the game. Thanks so much for watching the Your